Hey everyone, it is Irene Lyon here, and welcome to this entire world of nervous system health and healing. I wanted to riff on a topic that I actually bring up a lot when I'm on podcasts. And of course, I get inspired even when I am speaking to folks, because it's often in those moments when you are not sure what you're going to say next or what the question is going to be that ideas come just like that, and one says, never thought of it that way. And so this is one of those things I wanted to share. One of the hallmarks of my work is teaching folks how to restore nervous system regulation, heal trauma at the somatic nervous system level. That's what I do. That's what my programs and offerings offer. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that I am not a big fan of very technique, biohack driven techniques. We'll just say that. Now, this doesn't mean that there might not be an instance where a biohack or a technique is not useful, right? We could sit here and name all the things that might be a useful biohack or technique, but I'm not going to do that. But what I want to bring this back to is just the general healing of the human, we could call it condition, human nervous system dysregulation, which we know, which I know, which the research has shown us. When our autonomic nervous system has dysregulation in it, it impacts all of the systems in the body. Digestion, immune system, endocrine function, cardiovascular function, just general circulation, sleep-wake cycles, all the cues, all the connections with others, with the environment. It impacts and influences everything, this autonomic nervous system of ours. And so when we are adults and we realize by learning through me or other resources, wow, I definitely have a dysregulated nervous system, and I definitely have these various symptoms and ailments and syndromes, or troubles socially engaging, or troubles connecting with the environment, or I'm always getting into the same accidents over and over again, the same toxic relationships over and over again. I'm having trouble connecting with my kids, whatever it might be. Let's just say that a person has landed on that fact that, yep, need to fix this, need to learn how to regulate my system again. There can be this attractive pull to do these techniques and biohacks. And I'm going to name just a couple, something like breathwork, for example, or maybe something like there's a lot of stimulation devices that are being used to help stimulate something like the vagus nerve. Now, I'm not saying that these aren't maybe useful in a certain context. I myself will sit somewhere and maybe feel my breath and breathe a little deeply in instances. I've gone to physical therapy sessions where they've used stim on my muscles that are needing to recover after surgery and accidents. So I just want to make that very clear that there are times and places for those things. But when it comes to restoring true regulation to our autonomic nervous system level, growing capacity, building these layers within these systems, from my experience and many of my students who have tried the biohacking route and the techniques and the devices, they know that it doesn't get them to that, if we want to call it, finish line. Not that there is necessarily a finish line with our healing, but we could say that a person reaches a point where they have pretty darn good nervous system regulation through the work they do. It takes time, it often takes years, and it takes continued practice. This doesn't mean that with some of the learnings that they would work with me and all that, or another practitioner, that they're not having little wins along the way. And so this is the analogy I would share with podcast hosts when I say, well, think about it this way. When you have a newborn baby and they are not self-regulated, because they're not. Some things have regulation, granted they're full term, they've come out full term, healthy, their digestion works, right? All these things, some things work, some things are not working yet. A newborn baby cannot speak. They cannot regulate their emotions because they're not there yet. They don't even have emotional tone in the way that we would as adults or children or infants even. Not infants, sorry, toddlers, I correct myself there. So when they come out, they're very fresh, they're very raw, and they are dependent on us, the caregiver or the parent. If a little one is upset, we cannot say to that 1 week old, I need you to take 5 deep breaths and then hold at the end of the inhale and then exhale at a count of whatever, 8, let's just say. We can't say to that 3-month-old, I'm gonna hook you up to this device because I can see you're a little upset or your belly's not moving, there's a bit of gas. We're gonna stimulate that vagus nerve to bring more tone to it so that your digestion can move through. We can't say even to a 1-year-old and reason with them to have a better mindset about whatever it might be. I know this might seem obvious, but, or however you want to say it, when we are an adult and we know darn well that we did not get proper nervous system regulation wiring because our environment was just not conducive to it for whatever reason, when we're an adult and we're wanting to learn this, we have to go back. Now, we're not going to go back in time. It's not a time travel thing, but we have to go back to the things that never occurred for us when we were 1 week old, 3 months old, 1 year old, etc. We have to relearn how to connect to our bodies and feel the basic connection of our body with the ground under us. Now, of course, you're not going to say to a 1 month old or a 1 week old, little Susie, I need you to feel the connection with the ground under you. But it is the interaction with the parent caregiver, them allowing little Susie to be on the floor, feeling the ground and rolling around. I've done some beautiful videos of a little one named Liv. Liv is no longer little, she's a teenager, but watch those videos if you haven't yet. It shows the natural development of a little one that is healthy neurologically, learning how to explore the floor, the hardwood floor, right? So we learn that connection through experience. It's not through telling the little one, I need you to feel this. But of course, as an adult, now we have this higher brain. I can, or another really good somatic practitioner can guide you to reconnect to that connection with the floor. We can teach someone how to find what we would call a resource. I did a video called the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of nervous system regulation a little while ago. Be sure to check that out, because I'm not going to go through all of these things. But we might, for instance, have an adult connect to the resources that they have that are positive, that they know help soothe them and self-regulate in a positive way. And we might have them make a mental note, but to take it that step further, what is the interoceptive quality that you're feeling internally when you have that? I've got some cold tea here, but when you feel or smell the scent of that really good stuff, how do you sense it inside? And it's not a process of cognition and writing it down necessarily. You have to feel it internally. Just like if an infant is hungry and they're fed because they cry a certain cry, and with attunement from the caregiver, the mother, whomever, they notice little Susie is hungry. That's her hunger cry. This is what attunement is, knowing what these different sounds are, and then giving her food on demand. Her dysregulation, which really is just hunger, it's really hunger, is being broadcast out to the caregiver. Caregiver picks up that message and says, little Susie's hungry, we're gonna feed her right now. Little Susie gets the food or whatever it might be, the nipple, the bottle, the food. She feels the sustenance going in or the liquid, and that gives that little one a quality of feeling self-regulated, attuned, listened to, connected to, and then she feels, the little one, internally, I've been taken care of. This is why following our impulses as adults, biological impulses, are so important. We need to give our bodies what they are wanting, and that's why that practice, again, talked about that in that other video I just mentioned, and I teach this to my students in the courses, so important, because we are reversing in some ways back to the times when we didn't get that, and we're doing it now as adults. Now, if I take apart something like, say, breathing, because I know that breath work, for example, is really popular, and I understand why. When we are dysregulated, when we have had bad things happen to us, our breath gets stuck, right? It might be stuck, but it's not just the breathing. It's the tissues, it's the fascia, it's the way our ribs move, it's our sense of our posture and breath, but it's also the context of why did our breathing stop being natural? Why did it get held? Why is there fear trapped in it? Why is there grief trapped in it? All the things. So again, one can go through some breathwork work, but if there isn't a connection to feeling these tissues, and if we're just forcing our way to open up in a very inorganic way these tissues that aren't quite ready yet because they have stored traumatic stress in them, we're trying to break through something that isn't ready to be broken through yet. So again, as a practice to stimulate and get oxygen in and CO2 out, not a problem, all good. But to regulate the system, we want to start working with the structures, for example, around the tissues, the lung, the movement, the posture, even the noticing that there's a holding in this area, in the back, even in the belly. Sometimes breath is not being stopped because of something going on in the lungs. It's something that's going on above or below, right? Or it's a trapped, what we would call procedural memory, which is can be an old stress, an old trauma that is sitting somewhere. It could be in our legs, it could be in our feet, it could be in our pelvis, it could be in a memory. And so again, nothing wrong with doing some breathing and noticing it in, say, a yoga class or a meditation class or a breathwork class or a cold plunge, a therapeutic session, those sorts of things. But when it comes to really learning how to restore regulation and rewire these pieces that were maybe never wired and connected with properly in the first place, we have to go back to some of those basics. So again, think about this when you are working with yourself, whether just by your own self, with the own your things that you've learned, the tools, the skills, or if you're with a practitioner, or even with my work, go back to that thought of, if I was an infant or a toddler, would I be doing this to help bring my system down? These techniques, these biohacks. It's pretty clear that the answer is no, we would not be. We would be wanting engagement with typically another human being that's older than us. Of course, many of us don't have another human being, and that's okay. We can still do this work without a partner, a therapist. We do it with ourselves. We do it by learning what our resources are. We do it by learning how to connect with the body, the environment, orienting, and also tuning into what is called the interoception of our body, following our impulses. All the things that, again, we should have gotten when we were little, but many of us didn't. So I'm going to end this video here. This is more of a musing or something to just plant in your mind's eye, maybe into your biology, to start to think about the things that our system wanted so long ago when we were fresh and new. They didn't happen. Okay, we might need to grieve it. We don't want to get stuck, though, in that role of, poor me, I never got that whole victim identification role. We don't want to stay in that, because that, from my experience, doesn't lead to a lot of healing. But we want to acknowledge, yep, that didn't happen. Process that grief, that sadness, maybe the anger that comes with that, because that's another important one that might come through. And then start to reconnect to these ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of nervous system regulation that I talked about in that other video. It's a longer video, about 30 minutes. So be sure to watch that if you haven't seen that one already. And just play with these ideas. Play with these ideas of what would a little one have wanted, and how can I, as an adult, not so much reparent myself, but bring in tools, bring in ideas, bring in education, bring in resources, connect with myself in the way that I can now because I have a higher brain. And this is the thing that's kind of cool as an adult doing this. We can use our higher brain, we can co-opt it to direct ourselves to properly attend to and bring intention to our healing and to our rewiring and to our restoration of regulation. We can use that higher brain for good. Whereas so often our higher brain throws us into pools that we don't want to be in, into that victim mode, into the I can't mode, I'm never going to get this mode. So again, I'm not saying that this is a snap, easy thing to do. It takes time. Just like, this will be my final thought, a little one doesn't come out and is able to talk and walk and do all the things, right? The apprenticeship of a human is years and years and years. And depending on how that apprenticeship was in those first few years of life will determine the maturity later on. But of course, good news, always good news, neuroplasticity, the capacity for our nervous system, our brain, our tissues, our thoughts to rewire and change, that is on our side. We just have to grab it, harness it, harvest it, practice, learn, show up for ourselves, be committed. I hope this video has been interesting and useful and has given you an idea or another way of looking at some of these biohacking techniques and other forms of practices that might seem good on the surface, but ask the question, are they actually restoring that deep sense of safety, connection, attunement to our somatic system, to our nervous system? If they are not in service of that, then chances are they're not going to serve solely as a way to regulate our autonomic nervous system. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next time.